So over this weekend, when the whole shutdown was going on, special forces raids were still taking place. Apparently, we're still drone bombing people. We're still going over to other countries. What's the most interesting is that I just made a video about this. And it was from October 2nd. Media preps war-weary citizens of Africa ops. This is obviously the Kenya mall shooting. What was the first one on the list here? Somalia, Mali, Sudan, Nigeria, North Africa. I also have made another video about the basically trade wars heating up between the East and West trading blocks, and Yemen intervention possibly happening soon. So just remember that. U.S. snatches al-Qaeda leader in Libya, targets Shabab, a commander in Somalia. U.S. forces stage 2 military operations in Africa late on Saturday, detaining al-Qaeda leader in Tripoli and raiding a home for the al-Shabaab commander in Somalia. Unlike the Somalia raid, the operation in Libya was successful. The U.S. military arrested Abu Anas al-Libi, a long-sought al-Qaeda operative indicted in the 1998 bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania. So it just goes to make you... he's suspect. If he's working for CIA, he's behind bombings, he's probably a CIA asset that they're taking out. Plus, it also they have a precedence to go over there in that region because Somalia is on one of the list of 7 countries besides Iran and Libya and Syria to go down. A separate operation raid in the southern Somali port of Warweary failed to capture a senior Shabab militant, and it was unclear whether he had been killed, but a U.S. official says several members of the Somali movement were killed. As a result of the U.S. counterterrorism operation, Libya is currently lawfully detained by the U.S. military in a secure location outside Libya. I believe it's on some kind of naval ship. He was the FBI's most wanted list with a $5 million reward, was indicted in the U.S. federal court in New York for allegedly playing a key role in the East Africa bombings. Failed Navy SEALs raid on Somali target could bolster al-Shabaab. Past U.S. strikes on al-Shabaab leaders, even successful ones, had not diminished the group. The pre-dawn raid Saturday came unstuck with U.S. troops who were faced with heavier than expected return gunfire and pulled out to avoid civilian casualties. Although the target was not named and officially described only as high value, the U.S. officials suggested the raid was prompted by Westgate, the mall shooting. U.S. defends kidnapping of alleged al-Qaeda operative in Libya, says the Secretary of State insisted the capture of the alleged al-Qaeda operative in Libya and a daring U.S. raid was legal after Tripoli demanded answers about the kidnap. So this guy's family is saying that the arrest was basically piracy. It was an act of piracy by a foreign force to kidnap my brother. They should have submitted a document to the Libyan government and put my brother on trial here in the country. He was released by the UK police after U.S. embassy bombings in 1999, a year after he allegedly got involved in the twin attacks at the U.S. embassies in East Africa. So there's more evidence kind of trickling out. This guy was an asset. He was reportedly arrived in Britain in '95 and lived in Manchester after he was given political asylum in the UK. He was arrested in 1999, a year after the bombings of the U.S. embassies. It says here that his name was placed on the FBI's most wanted list, but he was released by the Metropolitan Police and later fled the UK. One of the realities that we know about the whole conflict in Syria and that region is that these terrorists, a lot of them, don't speak local Syrian dialect. In fact, some of them even have British accents or German, whatever, and that's where they're coming from. British extremists use Syria as training ground. So they're using the Syrian civil war as a training ground before returning to the UK, says British Home Secretary Theresa May. As far as the failed mission in Somalia, Turkey is denying their role. Other allegations about their involvement in a recent operation with the U.S. Navy SEALs, saying that we deny these allegations completely, says the Turkish Foreign Ministry. Then as far as the mall attackers, Kenya identifies mall attackers, including an American. A spokesman for the Kenyan Defense Forces has identified 4 of the terrorists who took part. One is an American Somali, the other is from Sudan. Again, they're the two same countries I was talking about from Kenya. The 4 died when part of the mall they were in collapsed. These raids indicate Obama's souring on drone strikes. Officials say they were trying to limit civilian casualties. They said here that it may be a sign that the Obama regime wants to ease off on its controversial drone strikes and give the military a greater role in fighting terrorists. They said that they could have just fired these drone-fired missiles to take out these targets with a high risk of civilian casualties, but they're trying to move from counterterrorism operations from the CIA to defense and doing less with drones. Neuro enhanced super soldiers, a far-fetched science fantasy or inevitable future. I've covered this many times before. GMO soldiers, super soldiers, and this is what it's all about. Special forces now, not big bulky armies. But eventually it'll come down to this. Neurosciences, they call it. A lot of, man, if you had money to invest in neuroscience, because that's where it's going. It includes a timely review in this new issue, Frontiers in Neuroscience, various ways brain stimulation can enhance human thought and behavior with special consideration of applications and security services in the military. But boost their ability to learn, perform motor actions, to pay attention to events in the environment, recall information and memory, to exercise self-control. So, but it says enhance or inhibit our tendency to lie, improve our ability to lie successfully, encourage us to comply with social norms. It says here that normally carry punishment for disobedience. It says here this is what they can do with the simulation of the brain prefrontal cortex by messing with. So they're kind of telling you what's going on here. This transcranial magnetic stimulation uses the physics of electromagnetism to activate brain cells, influencing behavior. This is mind control. This is what the masses are already going through with Wi-Fi towers, cell towers, microwave transmissions, all the other goodies that they are pulsing through us. And so they just want to do this with these soldiers, but enhance it even more. And you can see with Sandy Hook shooters, I'm not sure if these people were actually there, if things were hoaxes, but it could be that these lone shooters and stuff. The Navy Yard guy saying he heard voices, this could be part of it, right? They're trying to use neuroscience to create these super soldiers, but they're using these mass shootings as so they can create patsies as far as experimenting with it. Moving on here, back to the regular news. Tunisia man extradited to U.S. in suicide bomb plot. This is from Thursday, October 3rd. So keep North Africa in the back of your mind as far as in Africa coming up. A member of Al-Qaeda who allegedly met with bin Laden in 2001 has been extradited to the U.S. to face charges that he conspired to carry out a suicide bomb attack against Americans in Europe. So there you go. If he's tied to bin Laden, 9/11, I don't know. Maybe they're just calling in their assets, right? That's what they did to Anwar al-Awlaki and his son, drone bombing him, both of them. First, American or something like that, and that was tied actually to Yemen. Remember the boat accident in Nigeria where people died? You have a plane crash now near Nigeria's airport that killed 16. Again, I'm just putting this out there because it's just stuff that's happening there. Nigerian forces clashed with Islamists. 20 people were killed when Boko Haram attacked a town in northeast Nigeria, triggering clashes with troops that were stationed there. Is Africa becoming the new Asia from October 7th? Global investors are turning to Africa to harness opportunities and tap the continent's emerging wealth, I guess. But it says here, will this be at the expense of Asia? Well, like everything else, the Asian people, they might get a job in some kind of energy a sector job or whatever, technology or educating. But they'll have nicer clothes and TVs and cell phones, but it's not long term, it's not sustainable, and it'll be at the expense of people who are willing to take on something and live better and watch other people who are going to be not able to be free, not able to be nomad at their tribes, and they don't give a shit. And they'll just, as long as they have that standard of living and sell out their people, that's what they'll do. And all these wars in North Africa, a lot of it, besides importing or exporting people into other nations to break up their bloodlines, is also to separate the people from the resources, and that's what they're doing here. The Bank of China last month announced a strategic business partnership with South Africa's fourth biggest lender, Nedbank, to increase business between China and Africa. Then next we have China drops anchor in Tanzania. The Chinese presence in the economy there is growing rapidly as the Eastern giant intensifies its quest for natural resources and a gateway to other African states. They said here they're the biggest single trading partner, 15% of their trade value, $2 billion. They're mineral rich, the country. Porous borders turn Libya into radical sanctuary. Libya is morphed into the Wild West of northern Africa just 2 years after the fall of the Gaddafi regime. In particular, the Libyan desert has become a sanctuary for radical forces. So in the middle of nowhere in the desert, it says here that basically they can smuggle all sorts of these weapons over the borders, and the army can't basically do anything about it. Yeah. Either they can't or they won't. So one person said that who belongs to the army, I saw Al-Qaeda vehicles there, but authorities don't want to have anything to do with it. Remember what I said, Libya also is a smuggling state into Syria and other places, probably Africa, for terrorists. It's like it's an outpost, which is why, you know, Stevens was there. It was a torture center. It was also providing Stinger missiles and that to terrorists. Radical, real hardcore mothers are eating out hearts and decapitating heads in Syria. This is interesting, and I'll move on. An army in the conventional sense does not exist in Libya anyway. Out of fear there could be attempts to overthrow him. Gaddafi, when he was alive, kept the army weak, which he was, why he wasn't able to overthrow the terrorists, right, to repel the terrorists, basically. Makes me wonder with Syria, maybe he has more support of the government and basically the military there. We're talking about chaos, right? This is all organized chaos in the region. At least 53 killed, over 200 wounded as Egypt protests have turned violent. Police are openly beating Muslim Brotherhood sympathizers in Cairo. It's funny because I saw this article. Egypt's government reportedly shopping for a public relations firm. So they're looking for outside help. One is a London firm. It says here they're used with the U.S. and Europe to basically polish up their image as protectors of the state. I've actually covered this too about protesters for hire. I actually have companies for that. And I think that was actually being used in Egypt because there was something weird going on there that just did not make any sense. Protesters being caught basically freezing for the camera, acting as if it was a live protest. They were actors. So a lot of crazy stuff going on. As far as Yemen goes, they're back in the news. Yemen raids Al-Qaeda headquarters. At least 10 people killed as army retakes the building. So the Yemen government has taken the stuff from Al-Qaeda, the headquarters. But like someone said, it's a good point. Yeah, some places are Al-Qaeda. In Yemen, they're just rebels. They're just regular people that want to repel foreigners. They also want southern secession of their country. So German embassy employees shot dead outside a store in Yemen. So we're talking about maybe possibly intervention. This might actually do it. A German security guard employed at the German embassy was leaving the supermarket in attack. So he was shot. UNICEF worker kidnapped in Yemen. So these are all things that will bring in outside intervention. Speaking of outside intervention and setting sights on Africa, UN abortion groups set sights on African women. Says that there's an uneasy fit between global feminist movement and the population control movement. They have a common ground to promote contraceptive. To the feminist, family planning or avoiding children is a means for women to achieve aspirations, right? Become empowered. For environmentalists, it's a way to ensure fewer people. The Gates Foundation and world leaders pledge billions of dollars to ensure that women can have families if they want, as long as that means fewer children. In Pakistan, bomb kills 2 during polio campaign. So it says here that these polio vaccinators were attacked. 13 years on, we're not leaving Afghanistan for a reason, but Karzai say NATO mission caused a lot of suffering for no gain. Well, there was a gain, right? We have a huge presence just east of what? Iran, and, you know, of course, Iraq in the west. But, you know, whether it's Egypt, whether it's now Africa or these countries, it's about the East-West trading blocks and possible hot wars for over trade wars. Speaking of which, Russia-led security bloc holds joint military drills, mostly Central Asian countries. The UN in Syria begins destroying their chemical weapons. Kerry saying Assad deserves credit for honoring chemical arms agreement. Assad says we haven't surrendered to U.S. The real victory is when we squash terrorism. He says the West is more confident in Al-Qaeda than him, and that he may run again next year. This is GGN. Thank you.